Hello everyone, how are we doing today? Jameson, Alex here with Urge TV, and our thoughts, reviews, analysis, critiques, and all other things included for the recently finished Season 1 of The Legend of Vox Machina, the animated show based on the Critical Role game campaign with Matt Mercer and crew, to give our overall thoughts on the show as a whole. The first half, I think we're going to try to give some more general thoughts without giving away any spoilers. In the second half, we're going to go more like spoiler-heavy things. So we'll give a little spoiler warning halfway through for you, those either that haven't watched it yet, because either you don't have Prime Video or you just haven't got to it yet. You need to fix that if that's the reason why you haven't watched it. But we'll get there. We'll give you a little spoiler warning before we go into any crazy spoilers for the show itself.
Yes, so before we get started, we have our giveaway for the D&D Beyond Players Bundle. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in that.
Yes.
And again, video was sponsored by Hit Point Press. Make sure you check them out and their Big Bads series. So yeah, they got a new monsters, creatures that they give out every month with different lore, backgrounds, stuff like that to give you a big bad villain for your campaign. Yes. Speaking of big bad villains, we have the Briarwood arc.
Yes.
Is the main focus.
Yes.
So, before we get into any spoilers,
yes,
just give our general thoughts and opinions of the show. So, Alex.
Yes.
What were your initial impressions of how it began?
So, kind of saying what goes through the first episode, because there's no real spoiler bits at all there. I would say maybe a little bit of a slower start to the first episode than I would have liked.
I definitely agree with that.
But I think for the people, they had to kind of do some slower start, kind of introduce you, because it's not just like a main character or two, it's 7. Right. So there's a bunch of people you have to introduce kind of and get the feel of what's their personality like, what's kind of their background, what do they do, what's their character quirks, what makes them stand out. So you got to build a little bit of a character stuff as quickly as you can.
Yes.
So that kind of character things is established. So when they have character interactions through the rest of the episodes, they all make sense. It doesn't seem out of place. Like, why is this person acting like this or doing this? Explaining that, these two characters are brother and sister, and these two characters are best friends, and these two characters hate each other most of the time. And you get some of those little quick interactions. All that stacks up on time when your run time is less than 30 minutes.
Yep.
When you talk about the regular campaigns where they do an episode on a Thursday night, they're 3 hours minimum.
Yeah.
And usually 3.5 to 4. So they're shoveling down 15 to 20 episodes of show down to 12, 30-minute episodes.
And I will say that was my biggest concern with the animation of it, because there's only 12 episodes in the first season, and they are less than 30 minutes each. They're about 24, 25 minutes for every episode. So that's a lot of content, you think. But my initial impression is they actually did a very good job moving it all along in a timely manner that doesn't feel rushed.
Right.
I will have one little asterisk on there, which is I feel like, no spoilers again yet. But the first 2 episodes are kind of like a setup.
Right.
So those, to me, do feel a little rushed.
Yeah.
But the way they go through the rest of the series in the next 10 episodes has good pacing.
From like the last third of episode 2 on. Yeah. Because the bit Jameson's talking about is actually something that happens before they actually started streaming their game with Critical Role Campaign 1, which is obviously what this is based on. So they want to do something to kind of a way to introduce the characters in and kind of get what they were about. And something a story they told, I think on a stream one time, kind of where this happened and where all this all came from. But it's they do it as like an episode and 3/4 kind of thing. The animation studio nailed it.
Titmouse, yes, they've done
absolutely job. Knocked it out of the park. Like whether it's like the emotions of the characters' faces to the effects of explosions and sounds of like weapons clanging and buildings crumbling and nature, rain, weather, like all of it, like both sound and visuals, and again the way they did combat visually, fantastic.
And that's another thing too I wanted to kind of mention is again with the pacing of stuff. When you look at it and you think they're going through 20 episodes or 10 episodes of campaign, 3 or 4 hour episodes in 20 minutes or maybe an hour for a small little section.
Yep.
But if you think about it, how much of that time was them joking around with each other,
right.
how much of that was actually progressing the story forward. So it actually, I think, translates pretty well in the time allotted, because I was concerned with the time frame. But again, they do a pretty good job keeping the pacing.
Yep.
It doesn't feel rushed, again, outside the first 2 episodes, maybe a little bit. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with that. And like Alex was saying, the sound quality, the animation quality is top notch. You can tell and even the voice cast is crazy outside of the original guys.
Right.
You're talking
David
Tennant.
Yes.
You're talking I forget some of the names, but Azula from Avatar.
Yeah. Her name is Gray something, and I'm drawing a blank on her last name.
I'm drawing a blank too.
And then people who you don't really know as voice actors, but you have Rory McCann, who's the Hound from Game of Thrones.
Yep.
I cannot think of Princess Martell's, the Viper's wife from Game of Thrones, also as well as in there. Gina Torres, who first thing that comes to mind, she's she quit doing the role recently, but she was one of the main NPCs in Destiny for several years. I picture her face. It's like the
names today, not our stuff.
Dadgummit. Anyway,
there's lots of high quality.
Darren DePaul, who's literally who may be the most underappreciated chameleon voice on the planet.
Yeah, he's
the way he can distort his voice to do all kinds of different sounds and everything is fascinating.
But yeah, casting awesome, animation awesome. The team is great.
The one, I guess, creative decision that that's really the only creative decision that had me physically upset was the fact that they did not use the announcement trailer music and song for the actual show. Because it got me so hyped for the show.
Like the Your Turn to Roll thing, you mean?
Yes.
See that I thought about that at first, but then I realized if they use that, it would not make sense. Because it's rolling dice.
Yeah,
and they talk about DM.
And Caleb,
Caleb
who's been on our show a few times, some of our videos. He and I had that conversation, that exact conversation. It's maybe it's an immersion thing.
It doesn't quite make sense. Because they're talking about Critical Role. I don't think Critical Role's name is even in it. It's just the Legend of Vox Machina. I don't know if it has any.
It's besides the credits, I think, maybe.
Right.
It, but yeah.
So when they're talking about Your Turn to Roll, Critical Role, people would be like, "What?" If they didn't watch the show.
It would have saved. And I made the comment again after the first episode was over and they didn't use it. When the credits are rolling on the season finale, play that sucker.
Sure. Right.
At least put that in, because that was that song was so well put together by. I know Sam originally wrote it and then got a bunch of help getting it mastered and doing the instrumentation and sounds, and the fact that two of the ladies on the crew actually did the vocal works on it, with Ashley and Laura doing the singing on it. And there's a lot of great cool backstories how Laura was singing her part with their infant in her arms.
Yes,
because he wouldn't quit crying back in the recording studio while she's trying to sing her part. It's just great little stories like that. Yeah.
But all of that being said, there is actually one other thing that some people, I imagine, could be a little upset about, but it's understandable, is Orion is not in it.
Right.
They cut out the whole... They start the story... I don't know if I want to get into the spoiler spots. We'll wait a little bit for that. But basically, there is your favorite Dragonborn that existed for a small period of time.
Yeah. That does
not exist.
Yes.
Ryan Akaba. Because he did leave the show and just all that. Not going to get into all that, but basically it wouldn't really have made sense for them to try to push that in there. And then it's who would take that spot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's too weird and complicated to do that. I will be curious later on when, no spoilers again yet. Later on, they go to his hometown.
Yeah.
So how they're going to handle that if the show continues on all the way to that point, which after this season, I imagine they'll continue it.
They should.
And if they do, the next segment is a long segment. So it would be over multiple seasons.
It's probably 20 to 25 episodes or more in their campaign. Really, well,
if you talk,
it's probably 30, but there's other bits that kind of interrupt it here and there.
There's not a better spot now. We'll just say spoilers now because it's too hard to
Moving forward, there will be spoilers intermittent throughout what we're talking about.
Of campaign 1 and of the show as well, because they're based on the same thing. So in the actual campaign 1, I believe there is a small little segment where they have some, like, where they split the party and they do stuff over and with all the monster hunting and the Rakshasha. Anyway, all that was the whole thing. But after that, all that stuff that's kind of intermittent in there. There is they end the season on the Chroma Conclave arc.
Yep.
With the hesitation of before Amon gets hit.
Yep.
So with that,
with the 4 dragons flying in, obviously, because
episode 1 and 2, they're taking down Brimscythe,
which is blue one, obviously.
So that happened before campaign 1, but it is essential to the main plot of the story because in the second episode when they're fighting Brimscythe, Keyleth touches the keystone.
Yeah,
they see the dragon eyes through. That's how the Chroma Conclave know of them.
Right, and there's the whole Chroma Conclave like tapestry, or there's a rug, one or the other, that's got like the 5 dragon heads on it.
Right.
Or if it's a rug or if it's like a tapestry in the wall. So it's there.
There was actually really good foreshadowing in there because they talk about obviously in the first 2 episodes you have Brimscythe that they deal with, but then you see the dragon eye, so you know there's other things involved there.
Yeah.
Which leads up to the Chroma Conclave arc, which is after the Briarwood arc. And then during the Briarwood arc, they make way more mentions to Vecna, which they can't call Vecna in the show because of copyright reasons, so they call him the Whispered One.
Really?
Same thing with Saren Ray. They call him Everlight.
Right.
Call her Everlight.
Right.
So because of that, there's like Pantheon stuff that, even in the tal'dorei original campaign book, they had to change the names of the Pantheon because those are copyrighted by Wizards. So that's why they do some of that. They also don't call the monsters by the names of the monsters because some of the monsters are copyrighted by Wizards. So they can make monsters look close, but they have to make slight changes.
I'm so surprised with a show of this scale and this kind of a following that they would not have.
Well, look at the tal'dorei Reborn book that they just came out with.
Yeah.
And in Matt's ties to Wizards, and they published it on their own.
Right.
Which means they had to sidestep all that copyright stuff. So there are reasons why they do some of that stuff like that, just because copyright and to avoid that. When you're dealing with Amazon, they don't want to get into any litigation if they can avoid it for the most part. Not that it would matter to them, but because they could cover it.
Yeah. But wasteless spending. Bad for business.
But so there's all the seeds that they plant with the Whispered One, which in the original campaign, you didn't really get a whole lot of it. You knew like the book and stuff, but and obviously the Ziggurat. Right. They know that there was some kind of ritual going on, but they didn't really know much about it. I don't think they did know anything about Vecna or the Whispered One at that point in the campaign when they were playing.
Right.
So they're giving little hints down the road because if they do continue the whole show, we all know Delilah comes back.
Right.
And the whole Vecna arc is like the final stretch of the whole campaign.
Right.
So that's like the last arc that would be like the last season or 2 or however they do it. But the Chroma Conclave arc is like from episode 30-ish, 27-ish,
to
30th.
Like 80-something?
It's like 85, I think, is when it ends.
Of course, there are some like subplots that do break up like the meat, like all some of the other like characters.
Like you have Grog's thing with his uncle, and then you have them going after each of the dragons individually.
Right.
So you have 4 kind of sub-arcs inside that, plus they're getting all the vestiges in that time as well.
Yeah, so it's not like 58 straight episodes of just them going after the dragons, but like that's the main story arc for like 55 to 60 episodes with other sub-arcs taking place underneath.
So it'd be interesting to see how they do proceed with it. But they definitely have the content to do it. And that's the thing that makes it the progression of creating the show faster is when you already have the content established.
Yeah, you're not having to establish anything from nothing.
Right, you already have the whole story laid out. They already know what's going to happen, what to do, and all that. All they have to do is the screenplay for it. It's the same as basing like a movie or show on a book.
Right.
They already have the plot.
Yep.
They just got to make a screenplay for it.
Yep.
So that speeds the process up exponentially.
Right. And then there's the creative decisions about, do we want to modify stuff to make things more theatrical or make some changes here or there to change the pacing and stuff like that. Yeah. The only thing is I don't want to go 45 minutes to an hour with this video. Like Jameson said earlier, you knew going into this that the grand majority of this cast was already ginormous vocal talents from the main player character folks, you know, and we know the list. The one that stuck out to me the most, I think that impressed me the most after watching the show, it gave me a greater appreciation both for his vocal talent, his creative writing, and his character is Percy / Taliesin Jaffe.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Of him, he was the one I knew the least about of all the voice actors. Like him and Sam, I didn't know a ton of their work before his Critical Role. Because with Matt, Laura, Travis, Liam.
They've done some big.
They've done a lot of big projects.
Ashley, she won awards for The Last of Us and stuff. So.
Right. So I mean, the rest of them, I knew a lot more about their work, and with Liam, Laura, and Matt, both of us have played World of Warcraft off and on for years.
Yeah.
They play major characters in that lore, so I've heard their voice so many times I can't count it. And then there's anime shows we both watched and liked that have all of them involved in it as well.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Yeah, personally. Anyway, but seeing the way both with the animation style, Talison's performance, and his creation of his character, because I'm not going to butcher his character's full name, but Percival Derolo is the most well-written character
I think
of that bunch. And I think after watching that and seeing that, it's by a canyon gap.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against any other character in there. Right. But he's just the deepest, most unique character of the bunch.
Right. And I'd say no spoilers for the second campaign either, but or the third campaign. I think Taliesin is a very underrated player because he sows lots of seeds for his character and backstory and lore that I'm sure he discusses with Matt ahead of time, what he's kind of looking at, what I'm doing, and background-wise and stuff like that. But he puts a lot of thought into his characters that I think a lot of people don't notice.
Yeah.
But now that you're seeing it put into play where there's the plot-wise of how things progress and things like that, you really pick up on stuff that could have been missed in this hours and hours and hours of campaign.
If any of you guys either haven't watched much of the actual campaign but watched the show, the whole Whitestone arc, the Briarwoods, the Ziggurat, that was definitely some Matt's influence. But the grand meat of the whole story of Derolo family arc, how he was left, came back, all that other kind of stuff, that was all Talison's doing. He wrote all that backstory himself. And you can tell there's so much depth, and it's so well put together by him, and then fleshed out, and Matt helped develop the rest of the way through. There's a reason why they did. That was the story arc for the first season of the show.
I think that main arc there was what kind of like solidified a lot of people into the Critical Role community, because it was so
that storytelling was
good.
So fantastic.
I know the first arc was good with the Underdark and everything that they did with the Beholder and the Horn of Orcus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But in comparison to the way that you have all the social interactions and stuff with the Briarwoods and the tension with Percy and all that, I think it pulled in a lot of people into that community.
It gave me a whole new appreciation for the character, having watched every episode of that campaign 1, start to finish. Again, being a little partial toward the people I knew beforehand from their previous work,
I will say another point that I think that they did a really good job of is putting more highlight on Keyleth.
Yeah.
And I think she's even herself has learned a lot in the time being, because she really was the only non-voice actor
of the entire
the whole group. But she does a great job in the show, and they highlight her character in a way that in the campaign you could tell Marisha was not as experienced, I would say, as some of the other players. She's not a voice actor,
right?
And
didn't grow up playing D&D like Matt or Liam or Taliesin. She had some
inspiration from her character from Avatar, because the Arashari, and you have the Aramente going to the 4L.
Yeah, and she cheats because of who her husband is,
right?
So to a certain extent.
That being said, she's learned a lot over the last several years, playing through 2 campaigns and starting a 3rd campaign, looking back on everything, and around these people.
You can tell that she has grown significantly in her ability to do that role.
And they made her character, there were some times where it was a little bit awkward in the campaign, and I think that was just her inexperience as a player /
a D&D player,
But coming back now, after she's learned so much to that character, it makes the character way more likable, understanding, and they make her more of like an awkward cute than an awkward cringe. Which would sometimes be the kind of on the fringe there.
Yeah, that's a hard line to walk sometimes. But like I agree. You
like
give her credit for
awkward, and you have like the cringy awkward.
Because it came off more as like naivete from her character, just not and lack of confidence in her character, which you can build on, as they did very well in the show.
Yes, absolutely.
Where like James said in that first campaign, there was several times if you watch it through, you're just like, oh, what is she doing?
But I know, like Marisha, like I said, when you're in a room of professionals, it's very hard.
You're behind the 8 ball
to get there. But like I said, they really did her justice, her character justice.
Agreed.
I'm very pleasantly surprised with how Keyleth was presented and Percy. But actually, really everyone in general. But there's a few key points I want to point out because obviously I watched through the campaign, watched through the first two whole campaigns, but there were some parts I'm like, I wanted to see how they're going to animate this.
Yeah.
One I knew for sure was when they like walk into Whitestone and they see themselves hanging from the tree.
Yeah.
That was interesting. But
so well done.
One of my favorite things is freaking Rambo Scambo, where he goes and burns out a whole house by himself, and oh my god,
transforms into the Triceratops, busts through everything.
I'm like, I want to see him be a dino, turn into dino mode, and just start rampaging through stuff. And then the Scanlan hand floating down with the middle finger.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
I'd say that was good.
To give a little bit of credit to, of course, everybody else specifically involved, both Grog and Scanlan both perfectly acted as you expect from the two of them. They know their roles as primarily comedic with other character building interactions involved there, and they're absolutely hilarious together. From the moment Grog walks on the screen and starts talking, I'm laughing, and I love it. So, which would that leaves us to the other two, the twins, with Vax and Vex, with Liam and Laura, respectively, because that's Vax, this is Vex kind of thing. You can tell how seasoned they are as voice actors playing, and they play very serious. Where Vax kind of goes out of this really serious when he needs to be, but will kind of do this playful, charismatic, and Liam flows through that back and forth so seamlessly. And it gives me a further appreciation for what it takes to be able to just sit behind a microphone and play a character that you've created. Now you're having to voice it and kind of relive some of those experiences. Yeah. And I think because they've played through the campaign and now they're basically reacting through it, essentially, it allowed them maybe to change how they would say some things, maybe put some different inflection on key instances. We know that this is a big scene coming up, and they can prepare for it and everything, and so incredibly well done by the whole cast.
Yeah, and I think there's actually, again, with the foreshadowing stuff, there's good foreshadowing for the relationships with Vax and Keyleth. Obviously, there's very obvious things there, but they also put in some very subtle stuff with Percy and Vex.
Yes.
If you're
a lot more subtle because that one is a much slower growing one throughout the first campaign.
Vex's character versus Vax's character are very different. Yeah. The only thing I will say is at the beginning, I feel like they maybe went a little overboard with Vex. She comes across a little abrasive, I would think. Yeah. I would say in the beginning maybe a little like a little bit of a bully, maybe. Yeah. But by the end of the first season, when she's gets Vax out of the mind control of the Briarwoods, you kind of see her more emotional side come through, and I think that's like just a small little character development.
She comes off, I think, kind of cold early on, but I think it's just because they're trying to maybe overemphasize her business-oriented self first.
And that's what I'm saying too. Is when by the end of the first season, I feel like you'll get to see her get a little bit more on the emotion, like her emotional side, where she almost loses her brother. Yeah. It's again just very talented actors being put in situations where those little nuances, you can see character development in that's such a short period of time. Yeah. But that's a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a lot of thought. Our thoughts as a whole, again, we could go another 25 to 30 minutes if we wanted to get further on the whole. But that will do it for our overall analysis. By all means, let us know what you thought about the show, your favorite parts, favorite scenes, maybe critiques you may have, because nothing's perfect, and what you look forward to seeing in season 2. Interesting thoughts about how it may change things. Anything down below that could create some very fun conversation and speculation for.
For sure, guys. As always, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notifications. Our new stuff is out. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Hit Point Press. Make sure you check them out and all of their big bad stuff and all that awesome stuff they have coming. And as always, thanks for watching.